Poetry is cool. But I find that people often have a jaded attitude towards it. And if I were to guess, this would be primarily because of being forced to study and analyze poetry in school. Poetry is often given the connotation of being boring and old and pointless. And you know what? I was one of those people. Having to find the deeper meaning and symbolism in really old poems that seemed quite indecipherable absolutely bored me. Having to learn about enjambment, caesura, scansion, anaphora, assonance, all that gets really confusing very quickly. Like, does anybody care what the difference between iambic tetrameter and trochaic pentameter is? But recently, I found a new love for poetry. I think poetry is, dare I say it, fun. I think it can be just as entertaining and exciting as a movie or a song or a video game. The secret lies in how we approach it. Poetry is a lot like music in the sense that you might not like some genres, but you love others. For instance, you might really hate classical music, but you're a massive fan of pop, let's say Katy Perry in particular. You can see how in this example, it would be ridiculous to dismiss the entire art form of music just because you don't like one specific type of music, that is, classical music. Poetry is very much the same. You might like some genres or styles, but not others. There is so much poetry in the world that there is bound to be something that you enjoy. It's only a matter of trying to find what that something is. So, let me share with you 3 poems that are completely different from one another. The Highwayman is a poem written by Alfred Noyes, and I must admit, it is one of my absolute favourite poems ever. The idea of tragic romance, where 2 passionate lovers are separated by circumstance, a la Romeo and Juliet, is one that should be familiar to you. In fact, you could go so far as to say that it is an oversaturated market. And I would be inclined to think so as well. But there is something about this poem that's over a century old, that feels so overwhelmingly refreshing in its portrayal of tragedy. The mental images that Noyes conjures up, for example, the landlord's red-lipped daughter, and the moon was a ghostly galleon. These are images that stick with you for a while. Her musket shattered the moonlight, over the cobbles he clattered and clashed, wine red was his velvet coat. I realize I'm just spouting lines from the poem, but there really is no better way to describe how effective it is than just letting the choice of words sink in. This poem is long and winding, much like a real highway, and Alfred Noyes creates this eerie, unsettling nighttime atmosphere where his poignant tale of romance and post-mortal reunification takes stage. I realize now that all that might sound like verbal vomit, but it is my best attempt to summarize an incredibly complex poem. I really do urge you to read it for yourself. Phenomenal Woman is a poem written by Maya Angelou, who was a prominent figure of the civil rights movement. Her work and achievements span far more than just poetry, but I want to focus on this poem, one that I actually read pretty recently, because it struck a special chord in me. And it should be odd that I actually choose this poem, one that is so explicitly rooted in the context of female and black identity, since I am neither. But I, regardless, find it empowering. The confidence with which Angelou writes leaves such a strong impression that is hard to shake off. The span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. The excellent use of repetition just absolutely hammers in the point. Angelou is proud of who she is and her body. She owns it and she knows it. And it isn't just physical beauty. The poem hints at an inner mystery, this notion that a woman's beauty is self-determined, that it comes from her confidence and her self-worth, her unwillingness to conform to the shackles of beauty standards. It's an incredible poem, completely different to The Highwayman, but of rivaling excellence in its own manner. And that's why I love it. The Fly is a poem by Ogden Nash, and I think you can probably tell that I threw this one in there for a twist. Ogden Nash is famous for writing these types of short, sweet, yet incredibly hilarious poems, most of the time about animals. This one about the fly examines its seemingly purposeless existence, creating a compellingly funny story about how God forgets the reason he created the fly for. Nash in general is amazing at comic timing in his poems, and it very clearly shows in this one. I think it's very important that I should include this poem here, because I want to emphasize the fact that this is what I mean when I say that poetry comes in different genres, different styles, different flavors, for different tastes. You might find this poem funny, you might not. You might want to search up some of Ogden Nash's other poems, or you might not be that interested. However, this is simply one type of poem in a vast expanse of others. Haiku, nonsense poetry, slam poetry, limerick, ode, sonnet, poems consisting of a single word, poems that are unfathomably long, poems about race, religion, life, death, experience, nature, the essence of time and space itself, or even poems about chocolate cake. If this video inspires even one person to try and read a new poem, then I consider it a success. And who knows, maybe if you tried reading poetry, you might like it. And if you find that you really do sincerely hate poetry, then, oh well, you can always listen to Katy Perry. Thanks for watching.